Hello everyone, it is Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Thank you for joining me in my little corner of the internet where I talk all things planners, fountain pens, and fountain pen inks. Today I am doing a requested video to compare the different Leonardo models that I currently have in my collection. So I have four different models in my collection here. I have the Momento Zero Grande 2.0, the Momento Zero, the Momento Magico, and the Ferore. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to compare them and take measurements, as well as I won't do writing samples with all of these just because the nibs, other than the Momento Zero Grande 2.0 and Angel Skin, the nibs are all Jowo nibs and they're exactly the same except for the elastic fine on this Momento Zero. No, wait, on this Momento Magico. See, I'm already getting confused. But I'll at least give you an idea of what these all, look like in terms of feel and how they look in the hand, and then we'll go from there. So firstly, I'm going to say that the first Leonardo that I ever purchased was this Leonardo Momento Zero Grande 2.0 in Angel Skin, and this one came with I believe it's a 14 karat fine nib, and it also has an ebonite feed, which is different to the other Momento Zero Grande 2.0 that I have here. This one has a Jowo number 6 steel nib and then a plastic feed. Now the thing with the Momento Zero Grande 2.0s that you'll notice is that both of these, or this model in particular, is a piston fill. And actually, I'll just move these to the side so that we can look directly at the Momento Zero Grandes. Let's zoom in here. So the Momento Zero Grande 2.0 is a larger pen and it is a piston fill. So on a Momento Zero Grande, this is a blind cap, but this here actually moves the piston up and down within the pen there. So this does not take cartridges or a converter. The filling system is all within the pen here, and then you get that ink window as well. Now there was a Momento Zero Grande version before this one that did not have an ink window, so the 2.0 version has definitely improved upon that. And then here you can also see the difference in the nib sizes between the Angel Skin versus the Winter Sunrise. So the Winter Sunrise has a number 6 Jowo steel nib, and then this one looks like it's slightly larger, and it is a gold nib with the ebonite feed that I will show you here. Perfect. So then in terms of the dimensions, I bought a special tool just for this video. So we're going to use here my lovely measuring tool, my digital calipers, to take measurements here. So the measurements for these ones are pretty much the same, so I'm only going to measure one of them here. So we've got the Angel Skin. So first I'm going to do the measurement for capped. So capped, it measures 5.9655 inches, and then uncapped. So uncapped, it measures about 5.372 inches. And then if you post it, which I don't post these pens, but if you do post it, if you post it, it's actually even longer than my calipers can measure. So over that 6 inches, so definitely longer. And I mean, it posts pretty deeply actually. So if you are a poster, these do post pretty deeply, but it just makes for a very wieldy, big pen. So now for me, one of the important things is the width of the body. So the width of the body at the widest point is about 0.5895 inches. And then if we're looking at the grip section, the way that I hold my pen is right about there. So I'd probably measure the grip section at about that point in the grip. So grip section be about 0.4925 inches, which is how many millimeters? Actually quite large, so 12.5 millimeters. So it's quite a large grip section actually. So then going between the body, which is about 15.32, and then going towards the grip section at about 12.5, where I grip it anyway, because depending on where you grip it could be slightly different, but about 12.5 in the grip section is a bit of a difference there. But for me, it is actually still quite comfortable to hold in the hand. When I first received this pen, it felt very big and very wieldy, but now I've realized that bigger pens are something that I do enjoy. So that is a little bit of a study, I guess, on the Momento Zero Grande 2.0. But then the next pen we're going to take a look at here is the Momento Zero. Now I have 3 of these. Let's move these 2 off. I have 3 Momento Zeros. The first Momento Zero I purchased, well, actually the first 2 were within the same purchase. It is the 2 Stilo e Stile exclusives from, was it 2023 or 2024? I cannot remember now. But both were Stilo e Stile exclusives. The first is Via Lattea, or Milky Way, and that's in the Strata Quartz material. And then the second is the Andromeda. Now, Stilo e Stile did release a second version of the Andromeda, but then it had a matte finish similar to the Via Lattea. So I purchased Milky Way. No, these were both from November 2023, and I absolutely love them. And then the one here is my lovely Winter Sunrise, the first release from January 2025. And the difference with the Momento Zero model, and actually that's inked, versus the Momento Zero Grande 2.0 model is, one, they're definitely much bigger in size, the Grande 2.0, but also the Momento Zero is a cartridge converter fill. So it comes with the converter, and instead of the piston cap here, this is a blind cap that you can unscrew, and then you can turn the converter in here. And then the nibs for these are actually the same. They're both Jowo number 6 steel nibs. However, on the Momento Zero Grande 2.0, I believe you can get a number 8 size nib, but not all of the Grande 2.0s come with that. And then I'll just show you these 2 here. So the Via Lattea has the rhodium or the silver trim, and so does Andromeda, whereas my Winter Sunrise has the rose gold trim. And all these have extra fine nibs because that is just who I am. And the extra fine on these writes beautifully. What I love about these is that it's got the Finis nib, which is Leonardo's beautiful, beautiful nibs. Love those. And in terms of the sizing, let's get my calipers out here. So the Momento Zero is about 142.4 millimeters capped, and then uncapped we have about 127.81 millimeters, which is 5.032 inches. Now, the grip section is definitely going to be smaller than on the Momento Zero Grande 2.0. You can see a difference in the grip section here. The grip section on the Grande 2.0 doesn't have any type of decrease or curvature in it. It's just straight. It does have a little bit of a lip before it goes to the nib, but then with the Momento Zero, you can see that there is a little bit of a curvature happening here so that it does get smaller as it gets closer to the nib. So depending on where you hold that, it may be slightly less comfortable. So in terms of the grip section, there's 2 places I'll measure. So the first is right by the threads here. So right by the threads, the grip section is 12.72, which is actually comparable to the Momento Zero Grande 2.0. But if we move to the smallest part of the grip section, it is 10.79 millimeters. And then comparing that to the size of the body, the widest part of the body is 14.47 millimeters. So definitely a difference in size to the Grande 2.0. I find that the Momento Zero Grande in terms of sizing can be comparable to the Esterbrook SD. Now, if bigger pens aren't for you, then the Grande 2.0 may not be for your size. But taking a look at my Momento Zeros, I'm pretty happy with the collection that I have here. And these are generally going to be less expensive than the Grande 2.0, especially as these come with the steel nibs. So for example, and I guess the pricing is going to be different depending on whether these are special editions or limited editions, but my my Via Latea and my Andromeda, when I purchased those from Stilo A Stile, they were actually on special as well. They had a discount code, so they were 124 euros. But then my Winter Sunrise in the Momento Zero, it's 255 US from Endless Pens, which they don't have anymore. And then the Momento Zero Grande 2.0 from Endless was selling for 320 US dollars. So that gives you an idea of cost difference. All right, and then the next model that I'm going to show, and I'm actually going to keep two of these on here just for comparison. The next model I'm going to show is actually my Leonardo Ferore Aqua Petra. And the Aqua Petra was one that I purchased actually off of Reddit. And this is definitely a different model than the Grande and the Momento Zero. You can immediately see that this is more cigar shaped because of the conical ends, whereas these are more, what is the term for this? Because they're more like jewel. They're not spherical. They're not, what is the term? Please let me know. But yeah, this is more cigar shaped. And the Ferore also has a Grande version as well. And I believe the Grande version is a piston fill, but I'm not sure. But the Ferore is also a cartridge converter, just like the Momento Zero, uses the same converter as the Momento Zero, but then it also has the blind cap here at the end, so that if you wanted to, you could turn the converter here as well. Now the Ferore also has a number 6 Jovo steel nib, but you can see that my Ferore's nib actually looks different, so it doesn't have the old style Leonardo Fenice nib. It's got a different branded Leonardo nib in there, and I know a lot of people prefer the one here on the left, but the one that's on the right I think is their more modern version. I really love this one. I love the detailing on this nib, but they're both still Jovo number 6 steel nibs. Now this one is a fine, oh, I was going to put the wrong cap on there. So the Ferore actually came with a fine nib that was tuned and smoothed by Annabelle of Applebaum, and very lovely wet writer, this one. But if we look at the length of this capped, let's bring in my digital caliper again. So capped, it is about 148.14 millimeters, which is 5.8325 inches. And then if we look at it uncapped, we're at about, if it would stay in place here, about 5.133 inches or 130 millimeters or 13 centimeters. And then if we measure the body of the Ferore, so the largest part of the body is 14.53 millimeters, and then the grip section of the Ferore is very similar to the grip section of the Momento Zero. You can see they both actually look pretty much exactly the same. They both have the curvature dipping in towards the nib here, so they start out wide and then go narrower. So the measurement of this should be very similar, to the Momento Zero. So yeah, the widest section at 12.65, but then the most narrow section is at about 10.46. So take those measurements, I say, with a grain of salt, because you can, especially the grip section measurements, because depending on where you're measuring in the grip, it's definitely going to vary. But the narrowest part is at about 10.4, which is still quite comfortable for me. Anything less than 10 millimeters for a grip section almost starts to be too narrow for me. So main difference with the Momento Zero and the Ferore is really the shape of the pen, because you've got the more cigar shape here, and here you don't have those conical ends on the Momento Zero and the Momento Zero Grande. So then the last model that I'm going to show you is the Momento Magico. And this is my most recent acquisition for Leonardo. I was really excited to get this from Endless Pens, and I purchased this with a gift card. So I don't know if I have the most recent price available. I'm actually going to look that up now. So the Momento Magico at Endless was actually offered with a 14K gold nib, and that was 694 Canadian dollars. But without the gold nib, it was 278 Canadian dollars. So actually not too bad. And the main difference actually with this one is that the Magico is a piston fill in a smaller size. So the Momento Zero Grande 2.0 is a piston fill. The Momento Zero cartridge converter, the Ferore a cartridge converter, and then we have the Magico here with the piston as well. So if we look at all of these now, if we uncap all of these, we'll be able to see the difference in sizes, and I'll take measurements of the Magico as well. One of the reasons why I was kind of on the fence about a Magico was because I thought it was going to be a lot narrower in the hand than a Momento Zero. But if we look at the measurement of the body, for example, because in terms of the length of the body, it's slightly longer than the Ferore. But if we look at the width of the body, the width of the body actually is slightly narrower. It's at 13.78, which compared to the Momento Zero at its widest point, it was 14.52. And then when we look at the grip section is more similar to the grip section that you see on the Momento Zero Grande 2.0. It's more straight without that dip in there. So it's more straight, and then you've got the lip at the end by the nib here. And this is definitely going to be slightly larger than the grip section on the Momento Zero. Yeah, at about where I'd grip, so about in the middle of that section, it's about 11.94, just under 12 millimeters. And when I hold this in the hand, it's very, very comfortable. And I actually like the grip section that doesn't have that curvature going in towards the nib. I like this more gradual decrease in width towards the nib. Really, really lovely. And then you'll also see that this has an elastic fine Jowo nib. I think this is a Jowo nib, or this might be an in-house Leonardo nib. But you'll see as well that it doesn't have the lovely engraving like this pen has. The elastic nibs don't have that engraving, and instead it has the grooves on the side there to allow for a little bit of flex in those pens. Oh, did I just get ink on me? I did. All right. Perfect. It's really interesting now to see all of these pens here in right next to each other and being able to compare them side by side, because the different sizes as well as the different models make such a huge difference, I think, for me. I still need to use the Momento Magico to really get a feel for whether it's the most comfortable for me. But one other thing that I'll point out in terms of difference here is the differences in the band as well on the cap, because when I had the option for different bands around the cap, you could have this one here that looks a little bit more I say Grecian, but then you could just have like the two bands, or you could have the three. And it's interesting, like those little design elements can make such a huge difference. And I believe this one, the Magico, has rose gold, but then the Ferore has gold. The rose gold on here is like a very, very faint rose gold. You almost can't tell that it's rose gold, but you'll know when something is gold versus the silver. All right, so that is an exploration of all of my Leonardo pens. I'm hoping that's helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, don't forget to hit that like button and to subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and have yourselves a great day.